Is a training program always the answer to the challenges of client communication? Hello, everyone. I'm Jennifer Kumar from Authentic Journeys, and many of you may be surprised that I'm asking that question because I actually deliver communication leadership and cross-cultural training specifically for software development teams in India that work with US clients. You might be thinking, well, wouldn't that question defeat the purpose? Yes and no. So, I mean, beside training, which obviously is a good thing in a lot of cases, and obviously I endorse it because that's where my bread and butter is, but it's not always the answer. In 25% of the cases, it's not the answer, or it's an answer along with training. So, what do I mean by that? So, someone comes to me with the business problem. Hey, my software developers working with US clients just can't seem to build trust with them. And when it comes to the client actually asking for a change to the project scope of the project, maybe they need to add a feature or they want to do this with less time or whatever the change is, my team can't communicate with them properly. I always have to get involved and everything becomes an escalation. So how do I solve this? What training program do you have for me? Sometimes it's a training program. So, and training can really help, especially if your software development team in India does not have a cultural context to the US culture. There are definitely things we can do in training, but there are other things that training cannot answer. So as I get into some of these projects, and now I've kind of learned how to avoid some of these pitfalls in my own process, right? Is that it's the process of the startup company I'm working with that is non-existent or is broken. So what do I mean by that? Well, let me go back to defining startup company. I work with a majority of startup companies in India, IT, software, in the software industry, for example. Now, when someone comes to my website, sometimes they get confused because they see some big branded logos there. But actually, a majority of the companies I work with are startup companies in India with 10 to 300 or so employees. And sometimes these companies are a little shy to share that they've worked with me, which is understandable, confidentiality. So that's why a lot of the logos may not show up on Authentic Journey's website. It's not that I haven't worked with startup companies or that I work with predominantly large companies. In fact, I don't work with predominantly large companies. I work with predominantly smaller startup companies, which, of course, the culture of the startup is to get right in there and start working. So oftentimes these processes, rules, regulations are somewhat missed, or they maybe haven't been developed in the way that would encourage a fluid communication, client communication. So what do I mean by that? So if I just take this example of, the client is coming in and demanding a change, and my team does not know how to handle that situation. So I always, as a team lead or project lead or scrum master, have to come in and talk on their behalf. It's really wasting a lot of my time. I need to go do other things. I need you to train my team to communicate more effectively. Of course, we can do that. But what if there's never a process in place for change requests? Actually, that simple thing is often missed in many of the startup companies I work with. So then I become a consultant. It's not just, the training, which still is helpful, but oftentimes maybe we don't need that training because there are a lot of problems with training, right? So can we get everyone on board? Does everyone have time to attend the training? When can they attend? Can we coordinate it when they have downtime from their client work? Because obviously that takes priority. And things like that happen, right? So sometimes it's the process that's not there at all that needs to be put in place, or it's a faulty process. And so, we have to take a step back. Why is the process important? Why is it important? And do you have any thoughts around why that could be important? Well, of course, the first thing that comes up is why it's not important. It's irritating, another set of paperwork or digital communication to follow through on, which of course we're really irritated with now, now that everyone's working from home, right? A lot more emails to and digital communication to actually follow through on. But actually, when you think about it from the client perspective, think about it from the client perspective. First of all, a lot of clients are not technical. They don't understand the process of software development. So you might have to educate a little bit around whether you use waterfall, agile, what are all the different sections, roles and rules of that software development process. So within that software development process, especially if you use agile, most of my clients go through agile processes and ceremonies and things like that. Change is the name of the game, to use an idiom, right? So we know that there will be change. It's going to be a chaotic environment. Software development requirements change very frequently. But obviously, there are some things that, whether they're required or nice to have, we would want to use a change request process for that. And so you would need to sit down and create this process and think about how you would communicate this to the client in the kickoff meeting. Maybe it's important to have a kickoff meeting. Clients are not technical. They not only need to know about the agile software development process and how it will be implemented with daily stand-up meetings and all of those kind of things, retrospectives, whatever other ceremonies you're using, agile ceremonies. But they also need to know, if they want to change, what's the best way to go about that? Should they just contact you directly? Do they need a change request? How would they go about that process? What kind of things would have to go on a change request? And then you might be wondering, why is a change request necessary? Do I really need that? Well, let me give you a case study. Okay, so I was actually called in to a company to give a training on how to handle negotiations in everyday project meetings. So this negotiation is not a sales negotiation, obviously, which is what a lot of people think of when they hear the word negotiation. Here it's more convincing, pushing back, influencing, being assertive, and really being able to not only clearly communicate and enunciate what is happening in a project, why certain things may or may not work, why certain features may or may not work in a certain type of development environment, etc. But also, since I work cross-culturally, how to use English in a culturally appropriate way with U.S. Americans, and there is differences between Indian English and American English. So we talk about those things, and I did the training, and it went well. And 4 individuals went from not being able to deliver a demo to delivering the demo, and also being able to influence clients during these project discussions. But while going through this entire training program, I was also consulting with that company, and found out that there was no change request process in place. There was of course, some resistance to even thinking about that. Not another process, not any more red tape. We're just a small company. Why do we need this? Anyway, I was able to influence and convince them to try it out. So they came up with that on their own change process, and I helped kind of inculcate that into the team communication strategy. They also used this process in the kickoff meeting to kind of describe to the clients coming on board what is not only agile software development but processes, but how, if you need to make changes during this software project, which is inevitable, how do you do that with us, and when do you need a change request, and how do you do that with us? So they tried this out as a test run with 2 or 3 projects, and a couple months later I came back and I asked them, how is this going, right? So here's the outcome, and it's pretty impressive, actually. Nobody expected this, right? Because nobody wanted to do it initially. So they said, well, it was hard. It was really hard to not only think about our change request process and what it was and how to implement it and what to do and how to train our employees on it, and not just the software development team, but how to communicate this to the clients. But we figured all that out with some of your assistance previously. And 3 months have gone by. It's been a learning curve for us and the clients, and also to figure out which things we need a change request for and which we don't. And that will continue to be a learning process. But what we've realized is that actually especially working with U.S. clients, we think that they really enjoy that process. They like to have that structure, so they really kind of took to it, to use an idiom that they didn't use, like a fish to water. They took to it really easy in most cases, and and they felt they actually seemed to build trust with us by using that process, which is one of the things you taught us in the cross cultural training. So over a few months of kind of coming over our growing pains with that, we started realizing that, hey, they're using this change request process, and it's actually eliminating a lot of those difficult discussions that we used to have. So that one problem, on one hand, is actually being reduced or eliminated in some cases, because the clients are going to that change request form and really thinking about, do they need this request? How will it impact this project? They're thinking about these things rather than just coming to us and kind of throwing requirements at us, or they're coming to us and having a discussion about whether we need a change request for something or not. And our developers are more confident in having discussions with them now because of the training part. So there's a lot less negotiations or pushbacks nowadays, because people are actually having conversations about this rather than, kind of a more like a heated or an avoided debate kind of a situation. And so this change request process has really helped us, and we're going to continue along with this in other projects as well. We're going to find ways to adapt it and keep it going. So you can see how actually sometimes a training is not the answer, and sometimes a consultation is. And with other companies, not this particular one I'm talking about the case study, but I have consulted and helped them actually come up with change request processes. Now, I'm not a technical person, but at least from the process orientated side, I was able to kind of sit down with them and help them kind of devise a process, and they would add the technical aspects into that process wherever necessary. So you can see that training may not always be the answer, process might be the answer. So where are some other places the process helps? You want employees that take more initiative. You want them to be more independent thinkers. You want them to be able to organize their day and their schedule on their own without you as a manager always telling them what to do. Now, in this virtual work from home environment, it's really much more important than ever, because you can't just stop by their desk and see what they're doing and then talk to them. They need to know this from the get-go when they get started in your working in your company, or maybe it has to be retrofitted training process now that people have been working from home for a while, and there might be very less chance that they're coming back anytime soon into the office. So the process to put in place for this is, when people are onboarded, to onboard them to your company's culture. This is a little more tricky than the change request suggestion or change request example, because you really have to think about, depending on the level of employee you're talking about, what type of onboarding they might need. So with a fresher, it seems a little more straightforward because they're coming straight from college. And especially for freshers graduating or passing out from colleges in India, they tend to have way less work experience than, say, someone who's graduated from college in the U.S., where internships and part-time jobs are much more common. So they might already have some kind of understanding of how to manage time on their own in a work environment, where that might not always be the case in India. So we take all of those kind of ideas and concepts and kind of inculcate them into a training program that's tailored toward your team's and company's needs. And that becomes part of the process. And that can be a train the trainer, where I train one of your trainers to do it. So you do it all on your own. And again, you might think, well, Jennifer, why are you suggesting that? Aren't you losing your business? I always prefer people to be independent. If I can make you independent, all the better for you as well, right? So you don't have to rely on me all the time. Sounds good, right? So that's one process to put in place. And then, of course, the second one I mentioned is when you onboard clients, the kickoff meeting is super important. And then there's other places in your company and inside your own processes that you only know I don't know, where some of these things will come in handy, and it just helps build the foundation. Because the people who come in for training say to me, "Hey Jennifer, you're teaching us all these really good techniques to communicate more effectively with the clients in the US, but our managers aren't here. Our managers don't know anything about this." So the managers do need to get involved as well. If it needs to be a separate interaction, that's great. But the thing here, and this happens with every organization, regardless of size to some extent, is that if the people in the top management really don't follow what they want their direct reports or client facing people to do, it's going to be much harder for the higher ups, so to speak, to mentor or support those that those who are working for them, so to speak, because they have not been kind of inculcated with those same values or same skills. So it's important that everyone actually be on the same page, so to speak, because if the umbrella has to be there to keep everyone underneath it, right? So if the umbrella is missing, everyone's going to get different raindrops and different things are going to happen. We don't want that. We want everyone to kind of understand the same processes, same procedures, same communication strategies, so that everyone in the company works on the same wavelength. Because then you're all moving in the same direction, right? It's not one person going this way, like management going this way, and client facing people going this way, and then only clashing when there's an issue. We want everyone kind of moving in the same direction. So that's what I'm here to help with, not just providing training, but consultation. And we get to that through really understanding the business problem. Why are you asking for this training? What is really the need for it? What was a problem or situation that has initiated this particular program, and or this idea for this program? And is it a program that we need, or is it something else that we need to look at behind the scenes? Now, if you're willing to have discussions about this, they are not always easy discussions to have. They take a little time to come out through. You can definitely get in touch with me. I'm happy to brainstorm these. I'm really here to help your team succeed. I'm Jennifer Kumar, authenticjourneys.info. You can reach me on WhatsApp. I have an Indian number, 91953934759. I have a US phone number, and I'm actually in the US right now, Mountain Time Zone, 385, that's country code 1, right, +1, 385-218-0947. So hope to hear from you and be in touch and have a conversation. Thanks for listening.